Thank you, Senator Van Hollen, and witnesses for being here today. I likewise am disturbed by the threat posed by technology, and particularly in the area of cyber intrusion, warfare, oversight, spying, and so forth. I guess it's no surprise that that systems that are in conflict, free nations versus authoritarian nations, would find that the competition goes beyond air, land, and sea, and is now also in cyber. You have to count me, however, as skeptical that there's something we can do to prevent the bad guys from doing bad things. It strikes me that they will use every tool available, and now there's a whole host of new tools associated with cyber and AI and quantum and so forth that they see as vehicles to do what they want to do. I don't know if there's any way we can prevent them from doing that other than by developing tools ourselves that are superior to theirs and staying ahead. Telling them, no, you can't spy on your people is simply going to be laughed at, because they will spy on their people. Telling them, no, they can't spy on us. No, they will laugh at that. They'll even use balloons to spy on us. But that's, of course, an outmoded technology. But the modern technologies they will use and abuse to the extent humanly possible. And I don't think there's anything we can do that will keep the authoritarians from doing awful things. Look at Russia. They just invaded a sovereign nation and are killing and maiming hundreds of thousands of people. So sanctions by American businesses or by the American government, or our calling for freedom of the airwaves and prevention of censorship, strikes me as making us feel good that we're saying things, but they're going to keep doing things that are detrimental to the freedom and human rights that exist in our nation and in other free nations. So I'm very interested in hearing what you all have to say about what actions we can take to do a better job securing our freedoms and preventing the authoritarians from taking advantage of the technologies that are suddenly available to them. I would note that particularly with the advent of AI and the leaps and bounds that it's taking over, predicted to take over the next 4 to 5 years, creating superintelligence, as we heard Sam Altman say just yesterday, within the next 1,000 days. With the advent of that technology and potentially quantum computing, what do free nations do to secure the rights that we hold so dear? And again, it strikes me that the way that we secure those rights is by being superior and having technology which is able to combat theirs with its superiority. And doing what America has always done, which is out-innovate and out-invest our adversaries, and by holding aloft the flame of freedom. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the individuals who've spoken with us this morning. I would imagine that if I were an authoritarian like Xi Jinping, I'd use these tools exactly the way he's doing them. I would use them to spy on people, to spy on the United States, to spy on my adversaries. I'd use them to censor the news to make sure they only got what supported me and my continuation as the leader of China. So when I hear discussion of, we need to establish norms and let them know they're breaking norms, or an expression of, expression of concern by the United States Senate, if I were Xi Jinping, I'd laugh. It's like, who the heck cares about global norms or expressions of concern for the United States and the Senate? The only thing that will allow us to defeat the spread of authoritarianism and digital authoritarianism is by having the tools and capabilities to push back against it and to exercising our own strength. Am I wrong in that assessment? I mean, it just strikes me. I'll turn to you, Mr. Jaffer. It strikes me that the pathway for us is to lead in technology, to push back against the Huawei's. I mean, to eliminate the Huawei's from our systems and TikTok from our system, get them out. and then work to help replace them in other places, and to have the rest of the world recognize this is a battle between freedom and authoritarianism. And they're going to do all these things because our norms they laugh at, and their norms we find reprehensible. But that's where we are. Am I wrong? And I applaud the work that you're doing to provide additional sources for information. But I look at what the Russians are doing, and the Chinese, but particularly the Russians, with all their bots overwhelming our systems. They're so far ahead of us in these things. That's one more that I take on. But Mr. Jaffer, help me on this. It strikes me that most of what we're talking about just doesn't make sense unless it's, hey, stay ahead of them, use our technology to identify them, and kick them out.
No, Senator Romney, you're exactly right. The idea of sort of strongly worded letters from the Senate or from our diplomats or the like are not going to get this job done. What is going to get this job done is providing people who want freedom in those countries access to news and information the way that the Open Technology Fund is doing, and ensuring that we're investing here at home, that we're building the best and most awesome technology here at home. I mean, look, if you look around the world today, we are the leaders in AI, but that position is not guaranteed. In fact, if we adopt the approach that the Europeans have taken, which is regulate, regulate, and regulate, right, we're likely to lose that edge. So we need to avoid overregulation here. We need to incentivize investors here in the United States and innovators here in the United States. You know, there's a reason why the world wants to come here to the United States. It's because we have the most productive system of the allocation of capital around the globe. And protecting and preserving that economic liberty is critical to the effort to fight authoritarianism around the globe, right? It's not just that we're going to have a free and open society, it's we've got to take advantage of it, double down on it. And that's why also ensuring that our investors are not investing in Russia, in China, in Iran, and North Korea. All too many American investors take the benefit of investing in China and getting that advantage. But the truth is, those investments are terrible. Those investments ultimately lose money. And in the long run, the right approach is to invest here, invest in our allies, and invest in trust, safety, and security. And so we believe that there actually is an investment thesis around investing in the U.S. You know, Senator Ricketts, you're an innovator. You've worked in this space. You've helped develop startups. Senator Romney, you've done this at Bain for a decade. That is what it's about. It's about the allocation of capital. And until we recognize that all too many Europeans and the European system views us as the enemy, views our technology companies as the enemy, when in fact we're actually the innovators who are creating this space and these opportunities, I think at the end of the day, what we've got to do, to your point, Senator Romney, is double down on that and avoid the strongly worded letters. And the last point I'll make is, if we're worried about what's happening in the cyber domain, the best and most effective way to succeed in the cyber domain is to push back against what Russia, China, and Iran are doing. And until we respond to their activities here in our country and attacking us and our allies, they're not going to get the message.
You have each spoken about, or not, I think almost everyone has spoken about a free and open internet. And I'm not sure entirely what that means. We would obviously believe that all of our information sources should be available. The Chinese and Russians and others would think all of their information should be available. There would also be massive disinformation. We're seeing that now. I mean, I wonder whether the day is coming when the American public stops looking at the internet for information because it's so overwhelmed with information coming from bots, made-up stories, made-up pictures. So when we talk about a free and open internet, I don't know precisely how you determine that. Are we gonna, if you will, censor Russian bots? I guess I think yes, but then it's no longer free and open. And how do you define a free and open internet? Because I'm sure Xi Jinping would say that's what we have. We have a free and open internet. All the information that people need to see, all the truth as he wants people to see it, is there. And we disagree. We think what they have is false. But so who determines and how do we assess what is a free and open internet? And do we limit disinformation? And who decides if it's disinformation? This is, I mean, obviously it's something we're struggling with just here at home. Mr. Kaye, you look like you have a comment on that.
No, thank you for that question, Senator Romney. It's a very good question, and it's an important question that I think is actually quite complex. At the international level, we have basic rights to freedom of opinion and expression. And it is a robust right, actually. The international right is the right to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas of all kinds, regardless of frontiers. So it's a right that it should enable us to access information. And when we think about subjects like disinformation and how you restrict that, once we start to go down that path, we actually start to give the authoritarians a kind of opening to censor, because their view of what's disinformation is not our view of what's disinformation. So there are a few things that I would sort of point to here that I think are valuable for us to think about. First off, on the normative side, I hate to bring up norms, but the Human Rights Council, the UN General Assembly have very much pushed this idea that international human rights apply online as much as they do offline. And that is part of the normative shift that has happened within the international community. It is being pushed back against by China, by Russia, and by many others. I think we need to continue to push for the idea that individuals should have access to all kinds of information. I think we could also promote ideas that would essentially involve both the private sector and public actors in being involved in determining sort of the security that's required for people to engage online. I think this is a big part of what OTF does.
I'm going to interrupt just because I have to go to another hearing, and I want to just follow up a bit on this avenue of disinformation and open and free internet, what it means. Right now, an entity can publish an absolute lie and slander someone, libel someone, and there's no recourse for that individual because they don't know who did it. They don't know whether it's a bot or a person, and the internet company is free from liability as well. That the social media company. I don't know what the answer is to deal with this disinformation and slander and libel that occurs, and wonder, should we insist that the social media companies determine that there is an individual or an entity that's actually posting something on the internet, so that there is recourse if someone wants to bring an action against either a government or an institution or a person, as opposed to right now when there is absolutely no awareness whatsoever of who's behind a post and who's responsible for it. Ms. Cunningham, I'll turn to you, and Mr. Kay and Mr. Jeffrey. We haven't got much time, but any thoughts on that? All right.
More of a legal than a
all right, Kay, yeah.
Well,
Mr. Kay?
Well, I would say that we ought to look to actually the European regulation, the Digital Services Act, which tries to address this problem in a way that we haven't. And their fundamental approach is transparency on the one hand, but also risk assessment, an actual requirement that the companies conduct the kind of risk assessment to prevent the kind of harms that you're describing, and then requiring that there be some mechanisms of appeal for individuals who face these kinds of harms. It is a very tricky and narrow path to walk, I think, between demanding transparency and recourse and promoting and protecting rights to free speech. I think that's exactly where you're suggesting there's a problem, and I think that we could learn something from what the European Union has done in this case in trying to address this problem.
We're in trouble if we got to learn from the Europeans, but maybe you're right. Mr. Jeffrey, anything you want to say on that regard?
No, I think that's exactly.
By the way, I agree. That was humor. I agree. Yeah.
Well, actually, I actually worry that when we look at the European regulatory approach as the solution to America's problems on free speech, right? I actually think that could actually have significant innovation challenges. I think at the end of the day, what we've got to figure out is how do we protect anonymous speech, which there's a long history of in this country, right? While also addressing disinformation and misinformation, while also ensuring that we're providing capabilities to people who live in unfree societies to talk about the things they want to talk about and get the news from us. I have to say, I think the only solution to this challenging problem that you raised, Senator Romney, is recognizing that there's not a moral equivalence between what we do and what the Chinese do. When the Chinese or the Russians or the Iranians conduct surveillance, they do it in a one-party state with one control, no judges, no independent authorities. When we conduct surveillance, we've got to go to judges, we have to have review, Congress reviews it, there's a lot of oversight, and ultimately a judge weighs in. And so at the end of the day, I think that's the difference. It's not the same when we talk about their disinformation versus ours, or our legitimate information versus theirs. There's a fundamental distinction, and when we all embrace that fundamental distinction, I think at the end of the day, it's fine to put in place rules that require disclosure of names addressed to somebody who's violating American or, in the right case, European law, right? And it's okay to say, no, China, Russia, you can't get that same thing because you're an authoritarian society. It's just a different system, and it's okay to say when they do it, it's different, and when we do it, it's okay.